everyone, welcome to the MLATI YouTube series on all things legal tech. Today we've got Eimear McCann from Summize. Hi Eimear,
Hi, Wing.
thanks for joining us today. Before we start, is it okay if you give a brief introduction to yourself and also your role at Summize?
Yeah, sure. So my background is a legal one. I did law in Spanish quite some years ago. I qualified as a lawyer. I worked in litigation and then moved over to immigration and public law for a few years before moving over to the world of legal tech. I headed up the northern hub of Flex Legal in Manchester before joining Summize as their head of strategy, where I've been there for nearly 2 years now.
So I guess you talked a bit about Flex Legal and now Summize. I believe you're practicing law before. What made the switch? Why did you want to move in the legal tech vendor space, I suppose?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And I think there's kind of a time for everything, isn't there? There's kind of the right time. There's a right time for me to practice law. I really enjoyed practice. I particularly loved working for the law centre, but I think I always had a bit of a drive towards, the more creative side of things. And I think that legal tech is kind of at the intersection of creativity and law. So it kind of felt to me like a really good move, but also I just think it's where we're going. We live in a digital age. Tech is it's all pervasive, and I just find it really exciting as well.
Well, touch on the fact that you found it quite exciting, and I assume it's probably a new set of skills that you've had to use as well, different to, I guess, a traditional lawyer. So what sort of skills do you think you use on a day-to-day basis that is maybe different from a traditional lawyer, typical lawyering skills, if you like?
Yeah, and I think there's also a bit of overlap. And I think there's a lot that you learn during your law degree, which sometimes people don't really account for. For example, you have such a lot of information to get through, and you have to extract the salient points. You need to kind of get to the point quickly. And I think being able to kind of assess a lot of information really quickly and kind of move on, to the next stage is something that you do a lot within the world of legal tech. You hear a lot about legal tech companies that talk about their roadmap, but a lot of that is kind of assessing, the kind of the landscape, the feedback that you get from clients, and then kind of pulling it all down, extracting what you need, condensing it, and then coming up with a strategy. But I think probably on a day-to-day basis, I would say there is actually a lot of business development. There's a lot of marketing as well within the role that I do at Summize. But I think probably it is more of probably business development, seeking out new opportunities, but it's also having that bigger picture overview as well, kind of a holistic view of the legal sector and where the kind of legal tech landscape is going as well.
So based on sort of the skills that you've mentioned, and I also know that you're a visiting lecturer at the University of Law, do you think law schools at the moment should have more emphasis on legal tech? And if so, what should they focus on? And are you currently involved in shaping the curriculum?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Yeah, I think that there has to be a complete reimagining whenever it comes to legal tech. And there are some universities that are already doing that, and they're doing an absolutely brilliant job. And I think, as one person stated recently, it has to be just more experiential. It can't just be an adjunct or, an addendum to the curriculum. It's where we're kind of working every day. And I would really love to see the use of legal tech tools within the teaching as well. So, for example, if there are more visual ways of working that you could use different tech platforms to actually teach. I mean, there's a few that I can think of, but without mentioning any names, I just think they would be perfect for actually teaching many of the modules. So, as you mentioned, I'm a visiting lecturer at the University of Law, and with EU law, for example, the way that it is structured is often by means of a flowchart, and there are loads of tech tools that would be fantastic for teaching, but also to get students used to legal tech. And I think a lot of students and graduates are a bit anxious and apprehensive about legal tech. And it's simply because they haven't had that exposure. And I think that there should be more exposure, and therefore the education, it just kind of will happen a bit more naturally. It shouldn't feel like something that's over there that is almost kind of untouchable. In terms of designing the curriculum, it's not something that I'm doing at the University of Law, but I'm actually designing a module with a group at the moment, but it will be more for kind of guest lectures, and a module that I really want to design that will actually do exactly what I was saying, which will enable students to have a bit more exposure to the tech itself.
See, if they had that when I was at university with the tech tools, I think a law school would be a lot more bearable. But saying that, I completely agree. I think legal tech's thrown around a lot, and especially for students, you hear it as a buzzword, but you don't really know what it means. And I guess this is also a reason why I started this channel, to hopefully educate students or any interested parties in knowing a little bit more about what legal tech has to offer. But point taken, it needs to be worked on, essentially, on allowing them to understand it's not some far fetched or far reaching concept. It's once you have exposure, it simply becomes a lot easier, I suppose. So I guess on to now the next question. What sort of roles will be or have been developed in the legal tech industry, and perhaps any advice for any graduates or students who might be interested into getting into legal technology as a career?
Yeah, I think it's such an exciting time to be graduating. I really do. Just what you were saying about if tech had been part of your curriculum, it probably would have made your degree perhaps a bit more enjoyable. I don't know, but for me as well, I found the academic side of law was really, really dry. And I think that, as you know, once you get into practice, it's very different. And obviously that's where the LPC slots in. But I think kind of, by analogy, there are the kind of the world of legal tech, and what you need to know about it can sometimes seem a little bit heavy because there's so many products out there, and there are so many kind of subcategories within, the big kind of legal tech map. But what I think is really exciting is there are so many roles that are developing out of that and are kind of emerging all the time. And we've already got, obviously, we've got so much chat about legal design. And I think that you're seeing, I mean, I've been chatting to people who have roles within legal tech that I'd never heard of before, even in the past year. And there is an awful lot of focus on strategy as well. And I think that, whether you've got the consultancy side of things, the business development, whether you're actually interested more in the tech itself. I mean, I suppose by way of example, I suppose it's a bit of a microcosm, but Summize, in terms of the way that we're kind of made up, we have the dev team, marketing, customer success, strategy. And I think that's just one example of the roles that are within a vendor kind of space. But I mean, obviously you will know within law firms, you've got so many roles. You've got legal technologists, engineers, etc., which is fantastic. And what I'm curious to see in the future is whether there will be more roles like that will start to pop up in-house. But I know there's obviously an interplay between the law firm, external counsel, and in-house. So perhaps there may not be the need just yet, but I would love to reach a point where, we stop talking about legal tech and we just talk about technology, because that's essentially, it's essentially what we're looking at. And the roles that exist within the world of tech will also exist within the world of legal tech as well.
Yeah, and I think on that point, some firms have already started to do legal technologists sort of graduate schemes. I know HSF have announced sort of auto short Goddard, so some of the firms have already started to pave the way. And I think, like you mentioned, in-house legal technologists, it probably will come in time, and hopefully it will no longer be legal tech or law tech. It will just be technology, like you said. I guess there's one final question, which is, what do you see as the future of legal tech, and how do you think legal tech will change the industry? Which you've kind of alluded it already, but happy to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think that you mentioned earlier that there's an awful lot of buzzwords there's a lot of buzzwords within legal, and then we've got so many within legal tech as well. But, I'm sure you've heard as well words like, interoperability and consolidation and all of this. But I think that we will hopefully reach the point where everything is a bit more streamlined, where you've got platforms that talk to each other, that mean that whenever you're a lawyer, you don't need to be jumping around between different things. That whenever, for example, if you're drafting in Word, that you've got your add-ins for, the different kind of other platforms that you need, whatever stage it might be that you're in, whether it's negotiation, post-signature, etc. Obviously, I'm just thinking about from a contract review perspective, but overall, I think that we will reach a point where there is a merging between the different software, and I think that it's what we need. I mean, we live already, as I said, in a digital age, and we are really used to the fact that everything is very easy. And I think that we will get used to, I mean, I'm not practicing anymore, but I can imagine as a lawyer, if I was still practicing, I'd love to be able to just use my mobile to review. And we're already using Teams, email, etc. So we're already working within that kind of sphere anyway. So I think that is really the future, that legal will fall away to a degree. There will just be an acceptance that tech is just part of law, the way that it's part of everything else that we do. And I would also really love to see what we discussed earlier, which is that it also just becomes an intrinsic part of teaching as well at the academic level.
Well, thank you so much for your great insight on legal tech and your take on it. Hopefully we can see the new changes coming in relatively soon in law firms, universities, and also in-house. But hopefully you can join us again in our future videos. Thank you, Eimear.
Yeah, thanks so much, Wayne.